Welcome, folks. It's no surprise to anyone at this point that the Democrat Party has turned into one big political carnival. Only difference is the clowns aren't just in the ring, they're running the entire show, and the cotton candy is laced with hypocrisy. Democrats love to stand on their soapbox and preach about truth and integrity, yet week after week they hand us a blooper reel that looks less like leadership and more like a rejected SNL audition. Take Karen Bass, for example. She's managed to turn the devastating Los Angeles wildfires from earlier this year that destroyed thousands of homes into her own personal victim story, claiming hardship because she was at a party in Ghana, of all places, when it all began. Despite the fact that, according to a leaked phone call, she allegedly knew about the fire risks beforehand, went anyway, even after cutting the fire budget beforehand. And then there's Gavin Newsom, California's hair-gelled crook, whose bizarre behavior during a press conference last week had people wondering if his so-called high-speed rail isn't the only thing going off the rails. Now, to make matters worse, a resurfaced clip from his days as San Francisco mayor has reignited old questions about his past and his habits.
Offensive, sleazy, and the cheapest of cheap shots. That's how San Francisco Mayor Gavin Newsom is responding to accusations of cocaine use.
A San Francisco supervisor made the accusation this week. Diane Dwyer explains the very personal and bitter battle that brought Bay Area politics to a new low.
Whenever election day is, this is what you're going to see.
Supervisor Chris Daley and Mayor Gavin Newsom battle in public often, but what happened this week was far more personal. It happened at a Board of Supervisors meeting when Daley was arguing to save a substance abuse program from mayoral budget cuts.
While the mayor of San Francisco artfully dodges every question about allegations in his own cocaine use.
Whoa!
The audience was even taken aback, and Newsom shot back.
And I now am associated with something that I don't do, never have, not even in the realm of reason would someone even accuse me of this.
Daley says he has no evidence Newsom has ever used cocaine, but he defended his statement when he appeared on NBC 11's The Bay Area at 5.
And given that the mayor has admitted to having a substance abuse problem with alcohol, I guess white wine, why shouldn't every San Franciscan have the opportunity to get the help that they need?
Add in an extortion case.
Democrats are such a sideshow. It's absolutely insane. But what makes stories like this matter isn't just the circus. It's what the circus reveals about the Democrat culture that built it. Here you have Gavin Newsom, then mayor of San Francisco, brushing off cocaine accusations as cheap shots, all while cutting funding for substance abuse programs and admitting to his own struggles with alcohol. That contradiction is the real tell, folks. The same political class that moralizes about compassion, treatment, and equity is often the first to deny accountability when the spotlight turns on them. This isn't just about one politician's alleged habits. It's about a political culture in cities like San Francisco and in our state of California where hypocrisy isn't a bug. It's the entire system. Identity politics and media spin have created an environment where Democrats can deflect scandal with cries of victimhood or dismiss it as partisan warfare, and the press often obliges. Meanwhile, the people actually suffering from addiction in these communities see budgets slashed while their leaders posture as progressive saviors. That said, Greasy Gavin's evasions as the mayor of San Francisco, paired with his later scandals, underscore a much larger truth about the Democrat Party's grip on cultural power. Image management replaces integrity, perception is treated as reality, and personal failings get reframed as attacks on democracy. How dare you? Such a sleazy politics, as Gavin tries to frame it, is a logical outcome of a worldview that prizes narrative control above truth.
Clean and sober is one of the biggest damn mistakes this country's ever made. I know it's a hold-your-hand idealistic point of view that somehow magically, I mean, God bless some of you, if you're like me, I've been known to have a glass of wine at night watching some of the nightly news. We all need to self-medicate periodically.
I don't think Greasy Gavin is going to be beating any of the substance abuse allegations anytime soon. If this man is really out here saying that being clean and sober is the biggest mistake this country has ever made, are you kidding me? A greater mistake than Biden's botched withdrawal from Afghanistan? A greater mistake than Bush and Cheney lying us into a war over supposed weapons of mass destruction? What are you even talking about, dude? How is that even logically possible? But here's the thing. It's not just a dumb comment. It's a window into the worldview of the people who run California and, frankly, the Democrat Party. When Gavin compares the homeless addiction crisis that has killed tens of thousands to his nightly glass of rosé, he's trivializing death and despair while normalizing self-destruction. This isn't just tone deaf. It's purely ideological. Democrats have spent years framing addiction not as a problem to be overcome, but as an identity to be accommodated, weaving it into their broader culture of victimhood where personal responsibility disappears and the state becomes both enabler and savior. That's why San Francisco hands out needles like party favors, why harm reduction becomes the end goal instead of actual rehabilitation, and why people dying in tents by the thousands is excused as a compassionate alternative to accountability. It's bad faith wrapped in buzzwords. They tell us clean and sober is unrealistic, but what's really unrealistic is believing a society can survive when its leaders sanctify vice and virtue. Gavin's comments is a perfect microcosm of today's America, where the ruling class sells despair as freedom, mocks discipline as naive, and calls collapse progress. This isn't just California's problem anymore, by the way. It's the cultural export of the modern Democrat Party. And by the way, California's homelessness crisis has only deepened under Greasy Gavin. Between 2015 and today, the state's homeless population ballooned roughly 60%, reaching over 187,000 by early 2024, accounting for nearly a quarter of all unhoused Americans, and ranking near the top nationwide per capita, according to San Francisco Gate. Behind the numbers lies a human catastrophe. Around 82% of homeless individuals in California report having faced mental health struggles or substance abuse challenges in their lifetime, with 66% currently experiencing mental illness symptoms. Similarly, substance abuse affects roughly 65%, and many battle 2 or more disabilities simultaneously, according to California Healthline. Gavin's signature policies, harm reduction strategies like needle exchanges or encampment tolerance, care courts, and Project Home Key, have yielded mixed results. Unsheltered homelessness still rose 14% under his tenure versus a 52% rise in the 5 years prior, according to the governor's office. Many common sense people point out that despite the $24 billion spent between 2018 and 2023 and aggressive encampment clearance strategies, California still lacks comprehensive data to assess program effectiveness, and many facilities, especially for mental health, suffer from understaffing, poor oversight, and low quality of care, according to the Associated Press. This is a humanitarian and governance failure in full view. Public policy that addresses symptoms without building the supportive infrastructure needed for real, actual, lasting change. At the end of the day, Greasy Gavin's record on homelessness and addiction is a case study in a failure layered with arrogance. He's poured billions of taxpayer dollars into programs that have done little to reverse the crisis, only enriched nonprofits and their managers, and dismissed sobriety itself as a mistake, and wrapped all of it into the kind of slick rhetoric that papers over real human suffering. To that, his own history of substance abuse admissions, allegations of cocaine use, and a public style defined by brash defensiveness, and you see the pattern clearly. A leader more invested in protecting his image than confronting reality and helping his constituents. It's not just bad policy, it's the embodiment of California's decline under a Democrat ruling class that confuses denial with leadership. And there's no greater example of that than our clueless mayor here in Los Angeles, Karen Bass, who's now trying to make herself out to be the real victim of the wildfires that ate up thousands of homes in our city earlier this year. This is what she recently said on a podcast when asked about being in Ghana when the fire started.
The way I've tried to describe it so that maybe people could feel a connection to it is that if you had ever been out of town when a close family member or friend had an accident or became very ill, it doesn't matter why you were out of town. It doesn't matter where you were. You feel the deep regret that you weren't there when you were needed.
The thing you got to remember about Democrats, folks, is that regardless of the situation and what happens to their constituents, the true victims are always the Democrats. No matter the crisis, no matter the damage, the first instinct that they have is self-pity. They have empathy for everything except the people harmed by their negligence. And that's exactly what we saw with Mayor Karen during the Palisades and Eaton fires. She knew about the fire risk ahead of time. She was warning friends privately, according to leaked phone calls, but still chose to leave for Ghana because, as she put it in that leaked phone call, it was a good opportunity that President Biden had handed her. Thousands of homes were destroyed, families lost everything, but the narrative she offered afterward was not accountability, not leadership, but a plea for sympathy, likening her absence to the regret of being away when a relative falls ill. That framing is more than tone deaf. It's an admission that political perks outweighed her duty to the people of Los Angeles. And this moment reveals something bigger about American politics today, how Democrat leaders have fused identity politics with victimhood politics in a way that makes responsibility completely optional. By placing themselves at the emotional center of every crisis, they flip the script so that legitimate criticism becomes cruelty all of a sudden, and leadership failures become personal tragedies. It's a strategy designed to shield power while the public bears the cost. And if voters keep buying into that, the cycle of self-indulgence at the top and devastation on the ground will only continue. Now, just so we all get the facts straight, folks, this past January, Los Angeles faced a wildfire crisis of historic proportions. A relentless Santa Ana wind-driven inferno ignited multiple blazes across this region. Most devastatingly, the Palisades fire, which scorched 23,448 acres, destroyed approximately 6,837 structures, killed 12 people, and displaced about 105,000 residents, making it the most destructive fire in this city's history. Simultaneously, the Eaton fire consumed 14,021 acres, obliterated about 9,400 buildings, and claimed 17 lives, ranking it as one of California's deadliest and most destructive fires. These two alone obliterated more than 16,000 structures and forced evacuations for well over 100,000 people, according to People magazine. Across Southern California, over 200 wildfire alerts flared in just a few weeks, according to the World Resources Institute, and the fury of hurricane-force winds, often exceeding 80 miles per hour, turned dozens of neighborhoods into a ring of flame, according to The Guardian. Yet while this disaster unfolded, our great Mayor Karen was thousands of miles away in Ghana, and Internal Weather Service warnings of an impending damaging offshore wind event had been issued 2 days before her departure, according to the Los Angeles Times. In choosing a political opportunity over presence at a time of mass destruction, she ultimately turned a catastrophic emergency into a portrait of Democrat neglect. Needless to say, Mayor Karen is not the victim in any way, shape, or form in this situation. And what she should be doing right now is not twisting the story to frame herself as someone who suffered in this tragedy, but facing the reality of what her absence meant. There are hundreds of thousands of families who lost homes, memories, and loved ones, people who will be picking through ashes for years while she was across the ocean at a political photo op. To try to make this about her regret of her feelings is not just tone deaf, it's absolutely cruel. The only victims here are the people who trusted her to lead and instead were abandoned in their darkest hour by somebody who clearly could care less about what happens to them, as long as it benefits her publicly. Anyway, Mayor Karen also addressed the now viral interview of her leaving the airplane after landing in LA from Ghana, and this is how she framed herself as a victim again.
One, I was stuck and ambushed. And so it was a little shocking because where I normally deplane is different than the public.
Yeah.
And the code wasn't working. So I was stuck at the door looking at this guy who was trying to let me out. I had no intention of speaking to him.
Okay.
And I wasn't sure who the heck was flashing. I had no idea who it was.
Okay.
And there's a big spotlight that's on me. I've not slept in like a day and a half.
Yeah.
Oh, poor you.
I felt totally ambushed. I didn't know who was ambushing me.
Yeah.
And I'm not about to engage in a conversation.
You're not a big Sky News person?
No, I didn't. No. But I was also just dead tired, too, and very anxious to get on the ground. I'm feeling terrible. I mean, all of those hours I spent 12 hours flying from Ghana. That's the other thing, too, is the time difference.
Mm-hmm.
So I spent 12 hours flying from Ghana to LA. To DC, and then another 5 hours on the plane. So that's 17 hours on a flight. I'm dead tired. Somebody shining a big light and yelling at me. That was how I was taking it.
When are people going to think about the real victim in this situation, folks? Mayor Karen, who was asked a few questions after deboarding a plane about her dereliction of duty. That's the standard now. Not the families who watched their homes collapse into ash, not the neighborhoods torn apart, but Mayor Karen, because she had to face a journalist with a camera after landing from a trip abroad while this city was literally burning. And listen to how she frames this whole thing. She says she was ambushed. She was tired. She had flown 17 hours, as if jet lag is a tragedy and not the thousands of Angelenos displaced in shelters. This is the heart of the problem with Democrat leadership today, folks. The inversion of accountability. The Democrat political class has learned to survive scandal not by addressing the harm they cause, but by recasting themselves as the actual harmed party. That trick works because the media ecosystem they swim in amplifies those narratives, and because identity-driven politics has trained people to equate criticism with cruelty. But the result is devastating. Citizens become background characters while politicians position themselves as protagonists in every crisis. And that's why Los Angeles, a city with the second largest budget in America, still cannot protect its residents from the very disasters everyone knew were coming. Mayor Karen's annoyance at being questioned is more than bad optics. It's a window into a deeper contempt for accountability itself. The belief that political leaders owe us sympathy but not responsibility. And when that worldview takes hold, government becomes a stage for self-pity instead of a safeguard for the people it serves. And look, folks, I'm not going to beat around the bush with this, but who cares how this lady feels? Who cares, dude? This is your job. Nobody gives a flying fuck about how you feel. Do your job, dude. People are losing their homes. Families are clutching whatever belongings they could carry as flames ripped through their neighborhoods. Kids were sleeping in cots in evacuation centers instead of their own beds. Elderly residents were standing in parking lots, staring at the rubble of the lives they spent decades building. And while all of that is happening, our Mayor Karen was halfway across the globe on a political trip only to come back and make herself the story because she was tired from a flight and didn't like being asked questions. That disconnect is staggering. Leadership isn't about comfort. It's about sacrifice, responsibility, service, and showing up when people need you most. And if you can't do that, you don't belong in office. Get the hell out.
It nags at me, of course, because it's been played over and over and over and over again. Sure, absolutely. I mean, that's our life in social media now. And I'm sure I'm going to continue to see it.
Bro,
and
people
then,
lost their homes.
The moment, okay? There was the moment that I was going through.
Yeah.
But what's far worse was to see that moment.
Over and over.
Far worse.
Yeah.
Yes, because when you're going through it, you're not thinking about how it's coming across. You know what I mean?
Do you feel like you should have said something to the citizens that day?
You know, I honestly, at that time, I don't.
No.
No.
You don't think you owed that?
Well, it's not a matter of owing it. You know, absolutely. I owed Los Angeles everything.
Right.
But, and I know you probably can understand this, you weigh whether or not you burst out and say something when you're totally unprepared.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed to be on the ground. And I think in those moments, and not just that moment, because I've certainly experienced being ambushed many times, but when that happens, I do choose, there's some occasions maybe I've done differently, but I do choose not to say something because I want to be prepared. I'm not on the ground. I don't really know what's happening. And so to have responded then, and that's certainly something I've reflected back on. If I had to do it over again, would I have said something?
Would you have?
I'm not sure. Might have.
What would you have said?
I might have said, you know what, I got to get out of the plane and get briefed, and I'll have a press conference later today.
Yeah.
I think if I would have said anything, it would have been that.
That probably would have gone a long way.
Mm-hmm. It might not have stopped what he was doing, though.
This is legitimately infuriating. To witness somebody skirt accountability to this degree, it's almost unprecedented. This woman had every opportunity. She had warnings about the fires. She didn't have to go to Ghana. And when she finally did land back in LA, she couldn't even muster the most basic act of leadership facing the people she represents. Think about how simple it would have been. Walk off the plane, hold a short press conference and say, I made a mistake going out there, but I'm here now. I'm going to get briefed and lay out a plan to help my city later today. That's the bare minimum. Instead, she plays a victim of jet lag and cameras flashing after admitting She just spent 17 hours on a plane, supposedly on phone calls with officials in LA getting briefed, yet still didn't have even a 1-minute statement prepared to reassure Angelenos that she was back and ready to lead. Meanwhile, thousands of homes were burning, families were scattering into shelters, children are losing their sense of safety, the elderly residents were watching their entire lives just reduced to ash. In those moments, the city needed a mayor who could rise above her own inconvenience. What it got instead was a politician more concerned about what she looked like than what people were losing. This isn't leadership, folks. This is dereliction of duty dressed up as fatigue. And it's an insult to every Angeleno who suffered while she was away at a party in another country, even though she had warnings beforehand that all of this was coming. Unbelievable. And the crazy part is that this isn't even the end of it. On this very podcast, she makes statement after statement just like this about every other crisis and failure of hers. And we haven't even got to the section where she actually pats herself on the back for the so-called reconstruction happening in these areas affected by the fire, which, by the way, none of it is happening. Malibu is still in ruins. Palisades still in ruins. Whole communities remain devastated. And what little movement there is has morphed into an elaborate land grab under the banner of affordable housing. That's the playbook, folks. Use disaster as cover for political projects while the real victims are left behind. Honestly, there is just so much material on this podcast that we could spend an entire month unpacking it. But at the very least, this week we'll be walking through some of the cliffs, the failures, and the self-congratulations step by step, because this story is bigger than her one trip to Ghana and the failures that resulted from it. It's about the political culture that rewards neglect and spins collapse as progress. And these Democrats have to be held accountable, folks, because this interview itself is discussing just how much this man who does this podcast is just really trying to rehabilitate her image. So the real question, folks, is what kind of leadership do we expect from the Democrats in charge, and what have we become willing to accept? If a city can burn while our mayor treats accountability like an inconvenience, what does that say about the culture that enables her? How many times can we be told that failure is progress and that neglect is compassion before we just stop nodding along and get these suckers out? These moments aren't just about one politician or one crisis. They're about a Democrat political class that has learned to survive by rewriting reality and a media ecosystem that lets them do it. So ask yourself, when the people in power, when the Democrats in charge keep telling you they're the victims while ordinary citizens carry the real suffering, who is this system really built for? And how long are we willing to keep pretending we don't already know the answer? The Democrats are the problem, folks. You got to open your eyes. We got to vote in more Republicans. Anyway, you tell me what you think in the comments down below. Hope you have a terrific day. Peace.